Okay, we'll get started here. It's 11:32. This is a special GOC meeting. We have one item on the agenda. And just a reminder once again that the proceedings are being recorded and will be for public viewing. So the first item on the agenda, and the only item on the agenda, is to proceed to see if council is in agreement with submitting an application to host the 2024 Winter Games in partnership with the city of Roslyn. And on that note, I don't know if you guys heard the radio, but Roslyn's all for it. So now it's before Trail City Council. So Michelle or Lisa, did you want to comment on some of the details that you were provided with the BC Winter Games Society?
I can provide some introductory remarks. Thank you, Chair Santori. Just as a bit of a correction, it is the BC Winter Games, the 2026 bid.
Oh, sorry.
There would be a funding commitment required by 2024, which may be where that year came into play. But the city has been welcomed to prepare a joint bid submission with the city of Roslyn to host the BC Winter Games in 2026. And council was polled to determine your support because the timelines for submission were very tight. And it's understood that you all wholeheartedly agreed with the proposal to put forward a submission jointly with Roslyn. But with that, we are required to pass a resolution of support and commit some funding towards the venture. And the deadline for this submission would be tomorrow. So that's why it was important to gather you all together today to pass the resolution committing to the joint submission and funding. And with that, I'll just turn it over to Mayor Payson just to add some context. And we see that Tricia Davison is here with us now.
Tricia, maybe I'll just open it to you because you took a bit more of a lead in the meeting to just describe a little bit what was discussed. I'm happy to pass the torch.
Sure, thank you. So for those, I mean, there's many of you around the table that have been involved in previous bids and or games that have happened within the community in the past. So in this case, as Michelle noted, this is one that would be bid on with the city of Roslyn. It's the Winter Games. The process is a little different. Normally, what would happen is we would put together a bid committee. We would then go through the process to put together the whole application and submit it by the deadline, which is in theory tomorrow. But we were approached by the BC Games staff, or I guess Wayne is a volunteer, I think, by Wayne a couple of weeks ago saying, you know, are we interested in this 2026 Winter Games, because they hadn't had interest expressed to date. So the idea was that we're kind of being given a bit of a pass initially to not have to have the full application developed. And we would only do so in the event that the BC Games Society took our resolutions, if assuming they passed today, with both Roslyn and Trail, to say, yeah, we're interested in seeing you now put together a full bid proposal, and we would then go through the process with them. So the games are in 2026. The financial commitment that I believe I caught part of Michelle talking about technically wouldn't come to fruition until 2024. There'd be in-kind services that we would be expected to contribute. And I think the part that maybe sometimes doesn't get communicated as often is, obviously we would be putting money into our facilities over the next several years to make sure that they're up to snuff and ready to host whatever the activities are that end up being held in our facilities. So unless there were maybe any specific questions, I don't have the list of sports in front of me if you were curious as to what they were, but it is kind of heavily focused to the winter activities. There are a couple of odd ones that come off that I can think of off the top of my head, such as archery is part of the BC Winter Games. It's held indoors. I know Eleanor and Robert were certainly part of the BC Senior Games, and you'll recall that that event was held at the, sorry, I'm pointing out my window, at the archery facility just in Casino, but this would actually be an indoor activity. I think it also maybe is important to know that it seemed like we had a lot of support from Mr. Naka in this activity. He is keen to help us have a successful bid and see this event come to our community. I think it would be a really neat thing to have us be able to look forward to. It's a bit of a light at the end of the COVID tunnel. That would be sort of nice to see a major sporting activity come to our community, and certainly to have more time to prepare for it than we've traditionally seen. So maybe I'll leave it at that unless there's any specific questions.
Can I ask a question, Lisa,
Go ahead.
please?
Go ahead.
Or Sandy, sorry.
No problem.
Trish, what sports would we, the city, be responsible for, and what would Rosslyn be responsible for, or you don't know yet?
Yeah, we don't know yet, Eleanor. It would come down to that would start to get flushed out in the actual bid application itself. So there'd be probably some obvious ones like alpine skiing and cross-country skiing would be held in the Rosslyn community. And then there's others that would be certainly up for discussion. We were able to pull the 2006 bid application that was successful when the BC Winter Games were held here previously. So I'm sure we'd be using some of that template and or knowledge to help make some decisions. But at this point, there's no confirmation as to where sports would be held quite yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Go ahead, Carol.
I just have a couple of questions. So the bid committee would be equally represented by both areas?
That's my understanding.
Okay, and could you just tell me a little bit more about Mr. Naka? Is he the one that was the principal out in Castlegar?
Yeah, and the Crow.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Colleen?
So Trish, you mentioned that there would need to be some money going into the facilities to get ready for this. I'm just wondering if you've got any ideas or any examples of what we need to do within the next 4 years to get ready. And I guess that depends on what sports we will be doing in this area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. I think coming off of like the event that I was involved with within our community was the BC Senior Games, and leading up to that activity. So sometimes there's some specific things you need to do, say, to host a given sport. But I would say more so that the city was very interested in ensuring that our facilities were certainly up to snuff, and that we would be certainly very proud to have people hosted in them. And just to make sure those little I's were dotted and T's were crossed in some cases was some of the work that was done. In others, like I can think back to that activity, it kind of ramped up the process to redo the track surface in Haley Park. So if it was going to happen at a later year, once that bid came through, we just moved that capital project up as a priority because we knew we had to do it. So it's kind of decisions along those lines more so than something totally new or out of the blue that would come forward.
Right.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So on the teleconference, what they also talked about was if we are successful with the bid, the monies that the 55,000 that would be jointly put forward would go towards the planning of this initially. What they do is they create a society. So you build your team under a nonprofit society, and the committee members under the society are the ones that would lead this program. Of course, there's city interfacing, and we might have representation on the society or external interfacing, but it's a society that would then lead the games and all the planning that surrounds it. He also did indicate that this level of BC Winter Games differs quite a bit from the seniors games, where you have a lot of support. So for instance, if you're looking at cross-country skiing, let's just pick that, you have a team that comes in and looks at your facilities, looks at planning, looks at the scheduling, looks at the options. So there is a lot of support in the background from the BC Games to plan each sport and implementation of that in the area.
Carol?
Hi, Sandy. Okay, Teresa.
I got you, Colleen.
Pardon me?
I just saw Colleen's hand up as well. Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, I just thought of a couple of other things. Do we have any idea what the numbers were at the last BC Winter Games in terms of participants?
Mr. Naka noted that there were 2,000 participants at the last games. I think what's a little different about the BC Winter Games or even the Summer Games is that often the athletes also come with parents and family members to watch versus, say, for the Seniors Games, it's a little different. But in this case, so I believe, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the 2,000 was actually participants, not the extra people inclusive in that number.
Okay. When you first spoke, you indicated that the games approached us to see if we'd be interested in submitting. So if we're the only ones that had submitted, it's very unlikely that we're going to get turned away, and especially since they approached us. Would you think that would be correct?
I would think that that could be correct, yes. Okay. Assuming I haven't reviewed the bid package in detail. I think the only caveat to that comment would be if for some reason we just couldn't meet the needs of hosting them, but we have hosted them before, so I just can't imagine that that would occur.
Okay.
Colleen, I got you, Robert.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I guess I'm probably thinking too far ahead again, but I'm wondering if there was any discussion about looking at this with the COVID lens, and if that was going to impact the funding or the financing for all of this.
God, it better be over by 2026 or
Well,
we're all going to be in a loony bin.
Exactly.
There was no discussion on that at the meeting.
God, let's hope not.
thank you.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just praying, Colleen.
Yeah, me too.
Go ahead, Robert.
Is there any particular reason why they advanced it to us? I just didn't understand that. Is it because they've advanced it to other people first and they were turned down, or just they selected us first?
They
That would
didn't
be
have any
interesting to know.
applications. My understanding.
I can try to answer that a little bit. Again, this is just my personal reading between the lines, Councillor Kashoni, is that, so yeah, there weren't a lot of applications, but I think, or interest, I think people's interest is really in the summer games. And I think there's very few communities that can truly host the winter games with some relative ease. And so I recall Mr. Knack, and again, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall him sort of indicating that that was a bit of a challenge, and it just, it's not as, I'll call it straightforward as maybe the summer games, where you can host them in lots of communities that have lots of just facilities to hold those activities. Was kind of a bit of an impression I received.
Good, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I think just to, no, not a question, but just to Tricia's point, if you look back at the communities that have hosted the winter portion of the BC Games, it does seem to fall to a select group of communities in British Columbia versus the summer games, which sort of are much more easily held in different locations. So there's some that sort of repeat not year after year, but repeat on the list quite a bit since the late 70s.
Any other comments?
Nope.
Well, having been part of two of them, 1996, I believe, was the first time we held them or thereabouts. And then 2006, every hotel room in between here and Selma will be filled right up. And it's a good little boost for our local businesses. In my opinion, the financial hit to the city of Trail will be minimal at best. Like Tricia said, they will come in. There are groups that will come in. They'll look at your hockey facilities, your basketball facilities. And given what we passed with flying colors in 2006, I don't think we had to do anything other than maybe some cosmetics and some special equipment to, accommodate something maybe like archery or whatever. But for all intensive purposes, I think Paul's right. There are select areas where these games are traditionally held, because it's not, as much as we may think, we're pretty lucky in that we have all the facilities in one core, and then to have a world-renowned ski hill and cross-country track within 6 miles from here. The logistics of hosting it is a natural for this area. So I think we've got all of the components that they're looking for. And Further to that, NACA's always been a trail fan, and if he would like to see us host it as well. So I think it's great. And if Lisa,
I'll move the recommendation that the City of Trail, in conjunction with the City of Rosslyn, bid to host the 2026 BC Winter Games, and that an expenditure of $55,000 cash and $55,000 in kind be committed equally between the parties if games are awarded.
do we have a seconder? Seconded by Colleen. Any further discussion? Carol?
I just have one question. Where will the 55,000 come from? Where are we going to pull that out of?
I don't believe it's due until 2024, so it's not due today. So I'm sure David will work that into the future 5-year plan.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion, questions?
Nope.
Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
I
No one is opposed. The motion is carried. Did I get a motion to adjourn?
move.
So moved.
Moved by Lisa. Thank you. Have a
Bye-bye.
good
Thank you.
Thanks, Tricia.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Aye.